Serious Redditors who live in secluded towns. What is the darkest thing that happened in your town, but is kept secret? I returned home from school one day to a very powerful smell of gasoline throughout my neighborhood, and every emergency responder our town had. It was later found that a father of 3 little girls, who wasn't living there, tucked all 3 girls into bed and slit their throats. He gained access to the house by dismissing the babysitter. He then tried to blow the place up by flooding the basement with gasoline and calling the mom telling her come home, I've hurt the girls. Thankfully the mom went to authorities instead. If he was successful, my house would have blown as well. The father turned himself in and has been in prison ever since. The daughters were memorialized with a playground and the house has been torn down. I'm not sure what happened to the mom, but I've heard here and there that she has found peace in a new town. Oh my god, that makes me feel sick to my stomach. I can't imagine the pain she went through, but I'm glad she found peace. Over the summer there was a guy found hanging from a tree on the sheriff's property. The sheriff disliked this young man and treated him poorly during his incarceration at the county jail. Many witnesses said that the day he got released from jail, the sheriff invited him to his secluded property and told him he could help him get back on his feet. 2 days later, a couple of teenage boys fishing in a creek discovered the guy hanging in a tree. Authorities was notified, no investigation was done, and it was immediately ruled a suicide. This boy was a known drug addict with no family or friends, so there was really no one to press the issue. The local news wrote a small article on man found dead from apparent suicide, and then it was hush hush after that. It's just one of those things we will never know. That is uber fucked up. A guy was accused of molesting children, but because he was friends with the sheriff, nothing was really done. Once charges were brought up, the cops refused to arrest him, saying they couldn't find him, but he was spotted multiple times driving around town in his bright purple truck. After pressure from the townsfolk, he was finally arrested and pleaded guilty to raping 2 girls. But the judge just slapped him on the wrist with 10 years probation. Fast forward 15 years and the guy is a teacher and had a PC repair business on the side. He's still constantly being accused of misconduct with children, but it's swept under the rug. Finally police from a neighboring town get involved, and the FBI are summoned. They found a shit ton of child porn on his computers, both at his business and the school. He got 25 years in prison. The sheriff, and, for some reason, the mayor resigned not long after. I lived in a town of like 5,000. The only secret is the whole system is corrupt. One police officer got caught stealing painkillers, basically got a reduced and deferred misdemeanor, so in like 3 months it was off his record and back to being a cop. A cop's son lost it one night. Got in a fight with his girlfriend at the bar. My best friend was the bartender and kicked him out. 0.20 minutes later he is outside putting holes into the bar with a semi-auto. Amazingly nobody got hit. The cop's son also got his charges reduced from basically attempted mass shooting to discharging a firearm within city limits. I don't think that's even a misdemeanor. There's so much more. But the gist is corrupt people run the paper, the police station and the court. If you're in this circle you can do whatever you want, and if you're me, you will get sentenced to 1 year in prison for 1 gram of weed. I got the fuck out like 10 years ago. Solution: be a cop and start killing corrupt officials. Then use corruption to remove the charges. This is probably fairly common in small and isolated areas all over the world honestly. I'm not from the US, but it's similar here. Police and rich people can get away with a lot more. Do bad things and face 0 consequences, no matter how bad it seemingly is. On the other hand, yeah, the police went out to a village in the middle of nowhere and broke somebody's door down in the middle of the night for literally $3 worth of weed. Like WTF. Not so much a dark secret, but my town houses a bombing range that is still in use. No one has ever met anyone who works on it. No kids at school ever parents who work there. We never see planes or anything, but there is a guard at the gate. What was truly odd is that, if you ask a resident about it, we all say the same thing. Oh, the bombing range, there's nothing out there. In Mom's seaside hometown, there's a decommissioned lighthouse offshore. Even though utilities to the lighthouse have long been disconnected and the building locked, residents have noticed the beacon turn on at late hours of the night, just for a few minutes, then mysteriously grow dark again. It happens so infrequently that the time of illumination can't be predicted. As I once described here, no one has figured out how or why this happens. The Garnerville Pits Massacre. Multiple women murdered at a remote swimming area in an old abandoned quarry. One girl survived, but the killer was never identified. Not long later, a woman was found dead in a storage shed owned by the sheriff at the time. They arrested a black man who was from out of town with no connections to the woman and sentenced him to life. It later came out that the sheriff had been having an affair with the woman, but charges were never filed. Some speculate that the sheriff could be responsible for multiple murders, including the bloody Garnerville Pits Massacre. The doctor who tried all these wacky treatments to save his young patient from tuberculosis and became infatuated with her. After she died, he eventually robbed her grave, mummified her, and lived with her body for 7 years before being found out. Did not go to jail and lived his years out in town, I believe. It's not really kept a secret, but a pyramid scheme has been going on for several years. The dude was caught about 2 years ago and taken to trial. He bribed the jury. He was set for a retrial, but then something happened with the presidency, not related to the case, and it just didn't happen. Nobody really talks about it. The rate of children being kidnapped seems to be going up also. Nobody will talk about that either. Edited FR Clarity. Not far from where my parents grew up is the town of Skidmore, Missouri, which, honestly, a supremely fucked up place of weird, sinister stuff. The most commonly known incident is from the 1980s when Ken McElroy was shot to death while sitting in his truck with his wife in front of the pool hall in town in broad daylight. There were dozens of witnesses who saw the shooting, which came from multiple firearms, but they denied seeing the shooting or who may have been responsible. The news stories from the time sort of painted McElroy as a town bully, almost like Biff from Back to the Future, except he was fucking violent monster who had beaten, figuratively and literally, over a dozen charges including theft, rape of a minor. Remember his wife? Yep, she was one of the no rape victims and carried Ken's child at 14, and other general violent acts. Leading up to his town sanctioned execution, he had the gall to appeal a 2-year sentence for shooting a geriatric grocer in the neck with a shotgun and nearly decapitated him. So, why did he do it? Because the grocer asked Ken's daughter to put back a piece of candy she hadn't paid for. People appeared fed up with this rampaging 6'5", 270 pound thug who thought he could get away with rape and wanton violence. So somebody or a group of somebodies shot him at least twice and emptied quite a few rounds into his truck. No witnesses, and even his wife who was in the truck refused to identify the shooter or shooters. The daughter of divorced parents was raped to death by the mother's boyfriend. She was 6. Her father was contacting CPS and presenting evidence that the man was abusing his daughter under her mother's care. Nothing was done about it until she was life-flighted to Salt Lake, where she died of her wounds, and early in the investigation the mother admitted to letting her boyfriend play with her. The worst part is that because the abuser/murderer was part of the tribe, all he had to do was stay on tribal lands to not be taken into custody. So while the long process of an FBI investigation and the FBI jumping the correct hoops to make an arrest on tribal land, this man walked freely as long as he was on the reservation. Most people rejected the abuser/murderer entirely, but what hurt more is seeing the people who went out of their way to help him. His family tried to open a food truck where the highway passes through the res, so he could have a job. It earned a large protest considering the size of the town, and few out-of-towners stopped for tacos, so they fortunately had to shut down. The man's cousin was chief, so he was given a job in the dispensary. Some other members of the tribe who worked there walked out on the job and went to the council to try and stop it. Fortunately, as of now, the FBI has taken the mother and boyfriend into custody and they're awaiting trial. I've been called for jury duty twice now, and it's been cancelled each time. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more content. Peace.